Celeste had double-checked the reservation before she left the house, just as she double-checked her credentials every step of her life. Reservation for 2 at Le Marais, 7 p.m., under Dr. Celeste Morgan. Not Ms., not Mrs., but Doctor because. She'd earned every syllable of that title, and tonight was a small celebration of it. Her heels clicked softly against the marble floors as she entered the glowing, glass-encased sanctuary of uptown luxury. Le Marais wasn't just a restaurant. It was a statement, one where exclusivity was served as the first course. Around her, silk dresses shimmered and Rolexes glinted. Conversations floated like expensive perfume, always laced with a name to drop or a country club to mention, but Celeste moved through it like she belonged, because she did. She had tenure at one of the top universities in the country, had given talks at Oxford, and her latest research on socioeconomic racial bias had just been published in a leading journal. Tonight was meant to be a quiet, well-earned toast to her work and to her husband, Darius, who was flying in from Silicon Valley to join her. She approached the hostess stand with her usual poise. "Reservation for 2 under Dr. Celeste Morgan," she said, offering a warm smile. The hostess barely looked up. "I'm sorry, but I don't see that name here." Celeste tilted her head slightly. "It should have been made 2 weeks ago. Dr. Morgan, 7 p.m., patio table." The hostess flicked her screen, expression stiffening just a touch. "We have a Morgan reservation, yes, but it's for Veronica Langford." Celeste blinked. "Excuse me?" The hostess offered a customer service. Smile, tight-lipped, vaguely apologetic. "She's already been seated. I'm afraid the table has been claimed." Celeste stared for a moment, trying to make the math work. Veronica Langford. The name was vaguely familiar, an old-money socialite who occasionally popped up in tabloids for champagne-fueled galas and philanthropic luncheons. Celeste felt the slow, rising burn of embarrassment claw at her chest. "I can show you to the lounge area if you'd like to wait," the hostess added, already gesturing to a quieter side room. "Out of sight, out of the way." Celeste swallowed, her protest. She could have pulled up the confirmation. She could have asked for the manager. But instead, she adjusted the strap of her leather tote and nodded. "That's fine." She took a seat near the tall, curtained windows, folding her, hands in her lap as if she were defending a thesis all over again. Around her, champagne flutes clinked, laughter lilted, and her table, the one she had reserved, was now occupied by someone who had never earned the seat, but had always been expected in it. Celeste didn't cause a scene. Not yet. She merely reached for her phone and sent one text. To Darius. "I've been replaced." Celeste's phone dimmed after the message sent, and she folded it neatly into her clutch. Her reflection in the darkened window stared back at her, composed, elegant, unbothered. She'd mastered that look. Years in academia as a black woman had taught her the art of silent resilience. Be dignified. Be brilliant. Be better. And when that didn't work, be still and let the storm come to you. A server floated by with a tray of chilled rosé. He passed her twice without offering a glass. Perhaps she looked too much like someone waiting, not someone meant to be served. Or maybe she looked like someone who didn't belong. She'd seen that expression before. Polite, practiced indifference, hiding discomfort. She smoothed the lapel of her tailored navy blazer, the one she'd bought in Paris, and glanced again at the table she had reserved. There, under flickering golden light, sat Veronica Langford, champagne flute in hand, laughing too loudly at something a man in a pastel blazer had said. Celeste noted the table's location, center patio, ivy walls, right under the hanging. Garden. It wasn't just a table, it was the table. She reached again for her phone, pulled up the reservation, Le Marais, June 7th, 7 p.m. for 2. Under. Dr. Celeste Morgan, confirmed, clear, undeniable, and yet here she was, waiting like an afterthought in the shadows. 2 young white women passed her on their way to the restroom. One glanced at her, then leaned into the other and whispered, loud enough to cut. "Maybe she's lost." Celeste sat straighter. That old ache in her chest returned, the one she thought she'd buried long ago. The ache of being seen, but not really seen. Of being measured not by her mind, but by her skin and her silence. She wasn't new to this. At the Ivy League conferences, she was mistaken for a graduate assistant until she delivered a keynote. That left the room stunned. At fundraisers, donors had handed her their coats, assuming she was staff. At her own department gala, someone once asked her who she was married to, assuming that must be the reason for her presence. Her silence now wasn't weakness. It was strategy, and she knew the moment Darius stepped into this space, that silence would become a symphony. She checked the time. 7:12. Outside, the sound of cameras clicking and voices raising in recognition filtered in from the entrance. The valet's tone shifted, from bored to breathless. A low hum spread through the lounge, followed by murmurs. She didn't have to turn around. She knew that rhythm, the way the world responded when her husband walked into a room, not just because he was a billionaire, but because he never apologized for being one. Celeste took a long, slow breath. The hostess reappeared, her face pale and taut. "Dr. Morgan," she said, suddenly breathless. I believe there's been a mistake. If you just..." Celeste stood up slowly, gracefully. Behind the hostess, the doors to the main dining room opened, and in walked Darius Morgan in a custom charcoal gray suit, shoulders broad, jaw tight, eyes locked directly on her. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He simply said, loud enough for everyone in the room to hear, "What happened here?" A hush fell over Le Marais as Darius Morgan entered, a quiet storm in tailored wool and quiet fury. The maitre d', the servers, even the other diners paused, recognition blooming across their faces like sudden fog. This wasn't just another man in a luxury suit. This was the Darius Morgan, billionaire founder of Mortec, Silicon Valley's golden visionary cover of Forbes, the kind of man whose net worth turned heads before he even spoke. But tonight, he wasn't here as a mogul. He was here as Celeste's husband. He moved through the room with unhurried precision, every step deliberate. He bypassed the maitre d' who opened his mouth too late to greet him, ignored the hostess stammering near the lounge, and stopped, in front of Celeste as if the rest of the room had ceased to exist. "You look incredible," he said, voice low, eyes scanning her face. Celeste smiled softly. "They gave our table to someone else." His jaw tightened. "To a woman named Veronica Langford," she added, calm and exact. "She's sitting in my seat." Darius turned. He scanned the patio, locked on the centerpiece table. Veronica sat there, sipping from a crystal glass like nothing was amiss. She hadn't noticed him yet, until the tension in the room finally caught up with her. She glanced over her shoulder, then did a double take. Her smile faltered. Darius looked to the maitre d', now standing awkwardly at his side. "Who's in charge tonight?" I am Mr. Morgan," the man stammered. "Then I suggest you come with me," Darius said. "You're about to explain to my wife why the reservation she made 2 weeks ago, under her name, was erased, and her table reassigned." The maitre d' flushed red. "It must have been a mix-up." "No," Darius said coldly. "A mix-up is when you misplace a napkin. This was a decision." He turned to Celeste and offered his arm. She took it. The crowd parted for them like water. They walked past every occupied table, every turned head, every murmured whisper. When they reached Veronica, she looked up, visibly flustered. "Oh, I assumed this was a no-show," she began. "There was some kind of confusion, but since I've dined here so often..." "You took a table that didn't belong to you," Celeste said evenly, and no one questioned it. Darius glanced at the empty glass in front of her. "You should..." "Finish that, Ms. Langford. You won't be staying." Veronica opened her mouth, then closed it. Darius turned back to the maitre d'. "Apologize to my wife, not for me, for the institution you run that allowed this to happen." The man blurted a rushed apology. Celeste accepted it with a nod, but didn't smile. She didn't need to. Darius leaned down to his wife and said, quietly, "You choose what happens next." Celeste looked around the room, at the patrons, the whispers, the truth that had finally filled the silence, and made her decision. Celeste stepped forward, poised like a keynote speaker before a captive crowd. But there was no podium, no university banner, just a quiet, luxurious restaurant suddenly filled with tension. "I'm not interested in your comped meals or your damage control," she said calmly, her voice carrying without strain. "What I am interested in is the pattern, because this She gestured toward the table, then herself. Isn't the first time something like this has happened, and I doubt it will be the last. The manager had now joined the maitre d', trying his best to placate the situation. Dr. Morgan, we assure you this doesn't reflect the values of Le Marais. Don't you dare insult my intelligence, Celeste said, sharper now. You gave my seat to someone who looks like she belongs here. Someone white. Someone wealthy. You didn't even check. You erased my name without blinking. A pause. The weight of her words was undeniable now. Do you know what it's like, she continued, to earn your way into every room, only to have people constantly act like you snuck in through the side door? She turned to the other diners, now uncomfortably silent. I've had my coat mistaken for a server's uniform, been asked which professor I work for, at my own university. I've seen people assume I'm someone's +1, not the speaker, not the guest of honor. And tonight I made a reservation, under my name, and it was handed away without question. Veronica, still seated, shifted in her chair. You knew that table wasn't yours, Celeste said to her, unflinching. But you sat down anyway, because you've been taught that space belongs to you until someone says otherwise. Veronica's cheeks flamed, but she said nothing. The manager stepped forward again. Please let us offer a sincere apology and extend... I don't want a handout, Celeste interrupted. I want change. Darius now stepped forward, speaking for the first time since entering the dining room. As of this evening, he said, addressing the owner now summoned from the back, we're withdrawing our investment from your parent group. That's $15 million in seed capital we were considering. Gone. Gasps. The weight of financial consequence hit harder than any speech. Darius continued. In its place, we'll be funding a mentorship and dining scholarship program, one that places young black professionals in high-end spaces where they've historically been excluded. The owner sputtered. Mr. Morgan, surely we can... Darius raised a hand. No, this isn't up for negotiation. Celeste looked at the two young black servers standing nearby, wide-eyed. She gestured to them. Bring out the patio chairs, she said gently. We'll be hosting 2 guests at our table tonight. 2 days later, the video made it to the internet, grainy but powerful. The caption read, Black professor erased from guest list. Her billionaire husband showed up and changed the room. It was posted anonymously, but the impact was seismic. Within hours, it trended globally. Yet the reservation began as a hashtag, but became a movement. For every racist gatekeeping story, every moment of microaggression someone had swallowed quietly, the reservation became a banner, a battle cry. News outlets covered it. Celeste declined. Interviews. She wasn't interested in being commodified. Her work had always been about more than a viral moment. Instead, she focused on the program she and Darius had launched, the Belonging Initiative. It funded internships, etiquette training, and fine dining mentorships for young black students entering elite spaces, finance, tech, academia. Every month they'd dine in spaces like Le Marais, and every time the room would shift a little, more. As for the restaurant, a quiet statement was posted. We are implementing anti-bias training and changing our guest verification policies immediately. Celeste didn't comment. She didn't need to. Veronica Langford's name quietly disappeared from the society pages for a while. The world, ever hungry for scandal, moved on. But Celeste didn't. Back at her university, she walked into her packed lecture hall the following week and found students standing in a spontaneous ovation. One left a note on her podium that simply read, "You spoke for all of us." She folded it into her journal. Later that night, she and Darius walked the edge of their garden, hand in hand beneath the stars. They didn't talk about what had happened. They didn't need to. You still think I should have let it go? Darius teased gently. Celeste smiled. No, I think I let it go for too long. She looked up at the night sky, the same one she'd studied as a girl on her grandmother's porch, and whispered softly, They tried to erase me. Instead, I rewrote the room. She was told to wait. Then her billionaire husband changed the rules.